What's up YouTube, and welcome to my pickups video for the month of July 2022. This was a pretty action-packed month. I did quite a bit of travel. I got to see part of the country I hadn't really been to before, and around the 4th of July week I decided to go on a minor league baseball road trip and hit some ballparks in the state of Alabama. I'd been to the state of Alabama before, but just barely in the northern tip of it, and so I actually got to see quite a bit more of the state and did some exploring and game hunting along the way and got quite a few things on that trip. Also, at the end of the month, yesterday, was MoGameCon, which is my local con, which is growing bigger and bigger every year. So I got quite a few things at the con, as well as a variety of things I picked up through eBay and other sources throughout the month. So this month was pretty good, like I said. Let's go ahead and get started and talk about some games I got for Sony systems. First one of these has been a thorn in my side for quite some time. This is Gundam Battle Assault for the original PS1. And the sequel to this, for some reason, is much easier to find. I've found numerous copies of that one and have that in my collection a long time ago. But this one, every time I find it, it's completely dogged out or it's just incredibly expensive. And I don't know really why this one is so much harder to find than the sequel. But got a really nice, clean copy of this at a game store this month and was just happy to get it off my list. Not really a huge fan of the Gundam series, but this one is a pretty playable one, even for just somebody that's not looking for a mech action game, because this is more of just a one-on-one fighting game. Decent action and colorful, at least. Like I said, I don't really resonate with the characters or anything like that, but I'm sure it's a good fan service for those that do. So happy to find this one, as it's been just kind of a pain. Some of these Bandai games for the original PS1, I don't know, just somewhat uncommon, it seems like. The other one I found this month that I bought online is for the subset video that I just recently put out a couple weeks ago, and that is Real Fishing 2. Don't really have a whole lot of interest in this one, but it was part of the Natsume subset that I was going for, and so I decided to go ahead and grab that. This one also, for some reason, took me an absurdly long amount of time to find, even though it really isn't that expensive at all. One game that arrived, I think, like 1 or 2 days after I did my last video, and I was actually expecting it to show up then, is this new release, which is Poki and Rocky ReShrined for the PS4. This one is one that I've been anticipating for the last few months since it went on pre-order. It's the same team of Natsume developers that actually created the originals that are now remastering their creations for the later modern systems. And they've already done things like Ninja Warriors and Wild Guns that they had also created for the Super Nintendo, and so now we get this one. I'm also hoping they'll do Poki and Rocky 2 for the Super Nintendo and bring that one back as well. But this one is actually a lot of fun to play. They have really made the levels very, very long and challenging. The difficulty curve is much higher than the original the original Super Nintendo game, as I went back and played that this month and said, yeah, I did think that this was quite a bit harder. But I am enjoying it. It is, like I said, very challenging. It has a lot of variety. There's now 4 characters in the game, and a lot of cool new bosses that have been fleshed out to be a lot more terrifying and a lot more animation, things like that. So they really did a nice job with this one, and I can recommend it, especially at the $30 or so price point that it comes in at. I got one other newer release, but this actually I picked up at the con used, and this is one that I intended to buy a few months ago and just kind of put it on the back burner. So I got a really good price on this at the con, and that is Cotton Reboot. This one is again, remastered version of a classic shooter, in this case the Cotton game that came out in the arcade by Sega, which was developed by Success. And this also features the Sharp X68000 version of the game on the disc as well, so it's a nice bonus, as it's probably one of the best home versions of the era from when it originally came out. I'm pretty familiar with the Cotton series. I just ultimately never, or didn't get this one when it first came out, but was happy to get a good deal on this at the con and played it a little bit last night too. So can definitely recommend that if you are a fan of the Cotton series games. Some other stuff I got this month was a Game Boy Advance game I've been curious about for a while. This one I would not recommend, but it is definitely interesting, and that is Dual Blades for the Game Boy Advance. This is one of the few M-rated games for the system, and it is a one-on-one fighting game. This was actually Turkish developed, believe it or not, and the developer clearly was very influenced by many other fighting game series and tried to mash them all into one. So it has some elements of like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat with a lot of fatality moves. Kind of feels like Guilty Gear with some of the swordplay action in the game, and then the character animations really feel like a lot of the classic Capcom fighters, although they're just nowhere near as polished. So definitely appreciate what they were going for with this one, just a very arcadey action fighting game for the GBA, but it overall is lacking a lot of polish. So if you're curious, you can check it out. That one doesn't go for a whole lot of money. This next one is one I got on the Alabama road trip. I was super excited to find this at a game store near Huntsville. They had a really great selection, and ultimately I found that the game stores in the Huntsville area were really well stocked, so if you're ever in that area, probably a good place to do some game hunting. But this was one that I was really excited to get complete in the box. It's exceptionally nice. It still has the original shrink wrap around it, and that is Ghosts and Goblins for the Game Boy Color. This one, again, kind of unusually hard to find. It took me a long time, years ago, to even get the cartridge, and to get this one complete in the box with the manual and the warranty card and all that stuff intact, definitely very cool, with very nice artwork on the box. So very happy to have this in the collection, and ultimately that was one of my favorite things I got this month. Also got some games for the TurboGrafx and PC Engine at the con yesterday, and for some reason there was quite a few of those for sale, but I didn't really expect to see that. There was even Turbo Express systems for sale, Turbo Duos, so for some reason it was a very turbo-heavy con yesterday, which was nice to see. This one's been a hole in my collection for a while, number one because I like collecting Taito games, but I've been looking for it complete and ultimately coming up empty, so when I got a good deal on it, just Hue card only yesterday, I decided to go ahead and grab it, and that is Hit the Ice, and this was, like I said, a Taito published game in the US, which is kind of strange because there weren't really a whole lot of third-party publishers for the system. Overall, a very weak hockey game. It's like 2-on-2 action. It had some influence from Williams, and I know there was originally an arcade game as well, but I believe Taito did the development of the home versions. This game came out on a lot of different systems. There was a Super Nintendo version, a Genesis version, a TurboGrafx, even a Game Boy version, and then there was a planned NES version that got canceled. So for some reason, Taito believed in this series quite a bit, but I've never really caught the allure of it. And ultimately didn't really get that excited playing it last night. But ultimately I'd like to upgrade that to complete just for the Taito collection, but ultimately it's not really a great game for the system at all. This next one was bittersweet for me. I had to get this one from one of my friends, actually. He was selling it at the con. I stayed by his booth toward the end of the con, and it didn't sell, and so I decided to make him an offer, and he decided to take it. And so that is Bonk 3, Bonks Big Adventure for the TurboGrafx 16. And this is the Hue card version. The reason I mention that is there was also a CD version of the game that's even rarer than this very uncommon Hue card version. It's bittersweet for me because I used to actually have this complete, even including the outer box, cardboard box that it went with, that I bought ages ago, and I unfortunately sold it like 10 years ago before it went completely haywire in price. And I decided, I really wanted this game back because I like the Bonk series, and so I decided to go ahead and grab this for my friend. I'm very happy we were able to get a deal on this together because I have been wanting to go back and play it, and I did go and play it quite a bit last night after the con. Really, it's very similar to the prior two Bonk games. There's a lot of recycled art, it feels like, but the big gimmick with this one is your Bonk character can get small as well as very, very large, and a very, very big sprite that you wouldn't expect to see in a 16-bit game. So it has a lot of just gimmickry added to the classic Bonk formula. Doesn't really bring anything new to the table, but it's interesting to see what your TurboGrafx could do, especially in the late years of the system. This came out in like 93, I believe, in the US, which was the very tail end of Turbo releases, so it's very understandable why this game didn't sell that well. But it's kind of unfortunate because the other Bonk games were pretty popular for the system, so you would expect this one would have done okay, at least. There just wasn't a lot of people buying Turbo games in 93. But very happy to get this one again. It is cartridge and manual, and then ultimately if I ever find the outer box, that'd be nice. But I don't expect to this time around because this game has really shot up in price. So very happy to have it back in my collection. I don't ever think I will sell it this time. I learned my lesson, so we'll just keep that on the shelf where it belongs. Next up is an import for PC Engine that I also got at the con yesterday. This is one I've had my eye on for a long time, and ultimately the seller had a really good price on it, so I decided to take the plunge, and I'm happy I did. This one probably loosely translates to Horror Story, and it is a Toeplan developed game in the arcade that was brought to the home by NEC Avenue, who did a lot of the ports of arcade games for the TurboGrafx and PC Engine. This one is very quirky, and it's unusual that Toeplan developed it because most of their games were shooters, with a few deviations such as games like Wardner that we also got at home. Platform action game, very difficult. It has a lot of power-up variety that does kind of match in with their shooting games. But overall, very strange themes, again, going with, I guess, the horror theme or whatever. So there's some very unusual things that happen in this game. Like the artwork on the cover, of course, and then you can kind of see what the back looks like as well. But did enjoy playing this one for a couple hours last night, and I'd like to get a little farther in it. It does get pretty challenging, so As there's all these Toeplan re-releases coming out now for the PS4, and then they keep including bonus games, I kind of feel like I'm going to get burned on this one because I'll probably put it, the original arcade version, on one of those. But for now, there is no other home version of this, so I figured I might as well go ahead and grab it. Another thing I found on the Alabama road trip, this was a very strange find. This was one that I've had disc only for a very long time, and was happy to upgrade this to a complete copy. It is Championship Soccer for the Sega CD, and I know you're saying, what a boring sports game, why would you care about that? Surprisingly, this is one of the more difficult games to find on the Sega CD. There's one other sports game, a basketball game, that is equally difficult to find, and this one has eluded me for years. I don't know really what the deal is. It's somewhat playable. It was actually part of the Sensible Soccer series in Europe, which was pretty popular, it sounds like, on PC and things like that. Amiga, all those systems, ZX Spectrum. But overall, this is probably one of the only ones we ever got in the US. There is a very heavy, like, sim type bent to the game. You can even have, like, manager mode running where the games just play out themselves and you just make decisions before the games. But the actual gameplay figures look like little stick figures. They're very, very bland, especially for Sega CD. It doesn't really show off the system at all. But I'm guessing it was designed to play with limited computer, limitations from that era. So it is somewhat playable, I guess. It's pretty fast-paced action. I don't really love soccer games, but this one got me to play for at least a few minutes. And then they tried to add some cutscenes and things to really show off the Sega CD power, but it doesn't really do it that well. So happy to get it in my collection. It's been a really difficult game for me to find for the Sega CD for years. So that's all the games I got this year, but I got a lot of this month, but I got a lot of other stuff. And so first thing I'm going to show you is a very odd controller that I found on the Alabama trip. This was in one of the chain stores down there, and I've never seen it before. This is a joystick for the original NES or Famicom called the Wing Commander family computer, so it is obviously intended for the Japanese market. And it was actually developed by Hori, who is really the gold standard for arcade joysticks at home these days. But this one is definitely one of their weaker efforts, and you could tell they were still trying to figure out how to make these things back then. So the joystick itself is rather mushy, the buttons are very just nothing. They have no tactile feedback whatsoever, they're just squishy. And ultimately didn't really enjoy playing with it too much, but I'd never seen it, and it was a few bucks, and I said, I have to have this. So the other thing I saw from further research is I think when it originally was sold, there was like 3 different tips that you could get for the joystick, and you would use it for different types of games like flight sims and things like that. So this one just has one of the more just generic joystick tops on it, ball tops, which I guess is okay, but the other 2 it seems like have gone missing over the years. So a very unusual joystick for my NES horde of joysticks that I don't use. But a joystick or a controller that I will use, this is one that I've been wanting for quite a while. This is the Logitech Xbox wireless controller, and I kind of shied away from wireless controllers just due to the prior eras being so bad, but I didn't realize that by this generation of consoles that some of these third-party companies had actually got it figured out pretty well. So this one is very similar to the PS2 one I got a few months ago that I've actually been using quite a bit, and I figured I'd needed to get this one next. The way I went about getting this one was a little bit unusual, though, because this one requires a separate dongle piece, I guess, that has to plug into the console that you use to pair with it. And I actually found the dongle separately while I was on one of my trips for $3. And then I found a seller on eBay selling me the controller separately as well. And so put together, I got these for much, much less than I would have had I bought the combo together. So I think it worked out for both the buyer and seller of this one, because who else was going to buy it without the dongle? That luckily I got this one separately. The one thing that's different about this one and the PS2 is the PS2 hookup for the system itself is actually just a little piece that slides into the controller slot with a sync button. This one is much bulkier, and I think the reason behind it is because the Xbox memory cards, which typically would go directly into your controller, don't have a slot on the wireless controller. And I'm not really sure why they made it that way. So this actually has 2 memory card slots on the dongle piece that goes into the system. Kind of unusual, but it works, and I did play with it last night. It seems to be pretty accurate, so happy about this. There's also a couple other colors you can get this in, but this is kind of the basic black, and it works for me for now. So it takes 2 AA batteries. We'll see how long those last, but the ones that I put in the PS2 one have lasted for quite a while so far. Also, we're going to talk about one other strange accessory. This is quite possibly the weirdest thing I found this month. Even weirder than that Famicom joystick, actually. This is an official Sony cable for the PS2, which I had never seen before, and I've actually been doing some research on it. You can see the official Sony logo on there. This isn't some third-party thing. And actually what this is a VGA cable, and so it has a VGA input and then audio cable inputs on it as well. And this was initially packed in only with the Linux dev kit, or Linux software kit, I guess, that you could buy for the PS2. I got it separately for $3, which I think is a smoking deal because I think these things are very uncommon. It didn't come with the Linux disc, of course, but that's fine because I'd like to play around with it a little bit more as far as what it can do with the system itself and hooking it up to TVs differently. Watched a couple videos on YouTube. There's one guy that's very knowledgeable about this. He talked all about the limitations of it. Ultimately, it's a lot like a component cable, so it's not like you're getting a big visual boost, but it is an interesting curiosity, especially that it was an officially licensed cable that not many people know about. So definitely looking into playing around with this. Like I said, it's probably not going to give me some big visual boost, and it seems like there's a lot of tricks you need to use to override the software to make it recognize the cable. But when you do that, you actually will get a nice picture out of this. So very, very strange. I didn't even know this existed before this month, and for the $3 I found it for, it was definitely a no-brainer. So looking forward to testing this out, maybe playing around with it a little bit more in the future. Let's move into some boxes and manuals. So I think I mentioned this one last month, but this was one that I passed on at a con, I think it was, or a store. I don't remember what the deal was. And then I ended up buying it on eBay and kind of regretted it because I probably spent more buying it on eBay than I did in the store because I had to pay big shipping prices from Canada. But I did get Batman Returns for the NES, which is one of the later release games by Konami on the system. And I actually already had the box and cartridge for this one, so this one is now complete, which was very nice to find that. I got a couple boxes as well this month for NES. This first one I had never seen before. This was also part of the Alabama road trip, and one of the game stores had a complete copy of Baby Boomer for the NES. And this is one of the unlicensed games by Color Dreams. I believe this is actually their first ever release, and it's probably one of the most interesting because it supports the NES light gun. So it's actually a light gun shooter where you shoot all the things that are trying to kill the baby as it goes from point A to point B while crawling along the bottom of the map. Very unusual game and some interesting concepts to it. Plays pretty well with the controller as well, so even if you don't have a way to play the light gun, but I did actually hook up the light gun this month and was playing it with that. And it is pretty entertaining, so also has just completely whacked out artwork on it, so I decided that I definitely had to have this. But very happy to get this one complete. It wasn't something I was actively seeking out, but when I saw it in the store, I was like, I'm definitely going to buy that. So very unusual find there. Also at the GameCon yesterday, I got a NES box that I've needed for years, and that is the box only for Mega Man 2. Surprisingly, I do not have all my Mega Mans are not complete. The only ones I needed, though, was this box, and then now I need a box for Part 1, which is going to be very difficult and expensive to get, I'm sure. But when I get that box, I will now have all the manuals and carts for the whole Mega Man series on NES. So very happy to get this one out of the way. Again, I wasn't actively searching it, but I saw it at the con and was able to swing a deal with the seller on that one. Another thing I got from a friend before the con started, we were kind of planning some of the stuff that he was going to sell, and this caught my attention in his collection. He sold me the Spankys Quest for Super Nintendo, complete the box, so that upgraded my cart copy. And I've always liked this Natsume game. It plays kind of like a scrolling Bubble Bobble, but very, very fun, easy to pick up arcade-type game. Doesn't go for a lot even today, and I'm kind of surprised. I figured this one would have spiked by now, but it is definitely recommended. I've liked this game for years, and very happy to have it complete in the box. It also came out on the Game Boy as well, so if you're interested in the Game Boy version, that exists too. Another thing I got from my friend was a poster. I believe I needed this for my box copy for Maximum Carnage on the Super Nintendo. I believe this came in with the game itself, so kind of nice to have that. And then the rest of the video is going to be a lot of magazines I picked up. The first one of these is probably the most interesting. This is one that I got on eBay. I didn't even know this existed, and I'm so glad that I won the auction, because if I didn't, I would have freaked out and needed this forever, and I've never seen it come up for sale before. But that is an issue of Station magazine, which, if you can guess, is a magazine all about original PlayStation games. Why I wanted this so bad is it says at the top here, Game Fan Presents Station. So again, I'm going for a complete collection of all the Game Fan magazines, including spin-offs, and I didn't even know this spin-off existed. Upon some more research, I think there was one other issue of Station, but it doesn't have the Game Fan branding on it. It actually came before this one as like a preview issue, and then I think the Game Fan offices took this over, This one does have writing by Dave Halverson as well as Eric Mylonas, so it has like the two editor-in-chiefs both wrote for this magazine, which is kind of interesting. The writing style is very similar to Game Fan, but it is all very focused on PS1. And it doesn't feel like it's officially licensed by Sony, but it was almost like they were trying to get that, because there's articles about all Sony gear that they're promoting. Like, this is the Sony TV you should play on, with these Sony speakers, and this Sony VCR to tape your progress. And so it's just kind of funny to see like some of that pandering to Sony without actually having an official Sony license on the magazine. Overall, I don't think there's any others that came after this, but if there are, I'm going to have to track those down too. So, kind of interesting magazine that I think had a very short life. And that came around 97 era. Also got this from my friend. This is a Nintendo Power with Yoshi's Island on the cover. I'm not collecting all the Nintendo Powers, that would be crazy. But this one caught my attention just because I've always loved Yoshi's Island. I thought it was a cool cover. And then ultimately it got me back into playing Yoshi's Island this month, so now I'm like deeply addicted to playing through that, trying to get 100% on all the levels, which, as you know, is insane in that game. A couple other magazines I got from my friend were PSX Magazine, so also like 97 era. And these were a precursor, I believe, to the official PlayStation magazine. This one rebranded shortly after these. This first one is an issue about MDK, and then the second one is an issue with Mega Man 8. Kind of has a cool cover on that one. Another weird magazine I got from him is this Cutting Edge magazine. And this one was a spin-off of GamePro, believe it or not, that actually covers a lot of really obscure systems in it. It has, like, I guess it was more like a buying guide, but it has games for Neo Geo CD, Jaguar, 3DO, like, you name it. All the systems that didn't get a lot of coverage all got some very nice coverage in this magazine. So, while I typically don't like Game Fan writing style, this was actually a really nice tool to have just to see kind of what was on the market in that mid-90s era when this came out. I got this one on one of my trips. This is just another random issue of Video Games and Computer Entertainment. Kind of lukewarm on this magazine itself, but it did have this very horrible Street Fighter art on the cover that I thought I would show. And the interesting thing about this particular issue is it had a ton of coverage on Turbo Duo advertising. There was like 7 or 8 Turbo Duo ads in this for different games, including things like that Bonk that I showed you earlier. So very unusual, because they seem to have a very limited ad budget toward the end, but they must have spent it on Video Games and Computer Entertainment. Now, the bulk of the rest of the magazines I got, this also came from my friend before the con, and these are all issues of Mega Play magazine, which was a spin-off of EGM specifically for Genesis games. Probably a lot of the coverage in these is actually repeated from EGM. They'd like to do these little spin-offs like this. They're very thin. But you did get a few things that were unique to these magazines as well. So I got almost a complete set of these, and now I kind of want to track down the rest. I'm probably missing like 6 or 7 of them to have them all. But the first one of these, this was, I think, issue 1 or maybe issue 2. This is Phantasy Star 3. Then we have Batman for the Genesis, the original. This one is, I don't know, Fantasia, I believe, which was not a good game on the Genesis. Then we have one for Mercs. They did kind of go with a lot of the first-party titles, it seems like. We have a Golden Axe 2 issue. And then we have the Terminator, the original one. Bulls versus Lakers. Not really exciting there. Sonic 2, of course. We have Hyperstone Heist, as well as Batman Returns on this one. And then another Terminator issue, this one for Terminator 2, the arcade game. This one's cool to me. I'm surprised this made the cover. This is Rolling Thunder 3. Pretty obscure game I've always liked. Then we have Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition. This one is such a dud. Strider Returns. I love Strider, but Strider Returns is awful. Then we have RoboCop vs. Terminator. Pretty cool artwork on that one. We have a Dragon's Lair issue. Now we're getting into some Sega CD stuff. Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This one's pretty cool. This is the X-Men 2 Clone Wars cover. And then last but not least, Judge Dredd. So kind of a weird mix of titles that they put on the covers of those. But I'd kind of like to get the rest of them now that I'm so close to having the set, and thought those were kind of cool. So that is it. Like I said, quite a bit of things I picked up this month. Hopefully you enjoyed. Please take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think. And I will talk to you soon. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.